Hi, welcome to Fiber Hustle. My name is Chip, and this is the Side Hustle Quilting Edition. Today, we're moving away from lines and working our way into shapes. We're going to start out with block 11, which is shapes number 1. And then later on, we're going to move into block number 12, shapes number 2. So grab your favorite beverage and let's get sewing. Okay, let's start out with shapes number 1. As you see, it's just a picture frame, if you will. We're going to put inside the center of the picture a beautiful little Alison Glass bird, and we're going to surround that. We're going to surround that with 4 really bright, beautiful colors. I've got a teal, green, purple, and beautiful pink. All right, so let's start out. We are going to align our bird to the center of the square. Let me grab my light box, turn that on. And then, working on the opposite side, the wrong side of the pattern, we're going to put a little bit of Scotch glue stick right on the center of the square. You can see I'm not using a whole heck of a lot. And I don't need to actually even put glue all the way throughout the whole square. I just want to center it in place and then be able to move on. That should do it. Okay, so we are trying to see through and make sure that we are going to center this right the best we can. So I want my bird. Let's get out our trusty calipers. Again, we don't even need to turn those on. But what I want to do is measure from this circle to the outer edge where that line is. And this, I've got just a little bit of room, and it looks like I've got just a little bit more room. I can go this way. So let me recenter that. And if I wanted to, I could actually fold this circle in 4, and that way I would know where the dead center of the circle is, and then I would just place that right in the center of the paper. Actually, that might be a good trick. Let's try it. So I will align the interior lines so that when I go to fold this, I know I'm landing exactly in the middle. And that looks good. And then I'll do the same thing this way. Now, because I can't see through perfectly, I can see on both sides where those lines should meet, and they do. So I'm going to go ahead and give it another fold. Then when I unfold it, I'll know where the center of that square is, right there. Now, I can do the same thing with this bird. I want to align the circle, and I don't know if it'll show up on the camera, but I can see through and see that these little gold triangles are actually meeting up, which tells me that I found the center. So I can fold it and then fold it again, and then I'm going to give it a quick little press. That way I have a proper crease in the fabric. It's all about finding little hints and little tricks that can get your placement rocking and looking out of sight. Okay, so now all I have to do is place that right there. I know that my line is there. I know that my line is here, and this line, and this line. So that tells me I should have found the very center of my project. So I'm going to take a little bit more glue because it really dries pretty quick. So take a little glue, get it on all sides so I have plenty to work with. And then, while one finger is holding, then I can press down, shift it around, and do the same thing on the other side. Then we're going to go back to the iron and give it a press. Now, for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and iron the iron the other side. And then when we go back to the light box, we should be able to see, yeah, I think we did a pretty good job. We have, there's this much space and this much space. We're doing good. There and there. All right, so we know that we found the center, and now all we have to do is add our frame. And instead of just putting one color per pane, I'm actually going to combine some colors. So what I was thinking about doing is taking pink and purple for the outsides and green and teal for the top and bottom. Now, what I want to do is sew half and half. So what that means is the very interior will either be the pink or the purple. I haven't decided yet. And then it'll be a mirror image on the other. So when that seam between the pink and the purple, that should come directly in the middle of that line. So I'm going to go ahead and just give a straight seam, and I should press before I sew. Great. And while we're at it, might as well do the others. Okay, so there's our blue, and there's our beautiful green. I think when I was in high school, this was my favorite color, green. I was on vacation in Massachusetts with my best friend and his mom, and we were at the mall, and I think it was Chess King, and they had this shirt that was in this color. To this day, I still remember that shirt. I don't know whatever happened to it, but I haven't forgotten it. Okay, so we've got our pieces ironed and ready to go. And I'm actually going to lop off some of the excess because I really don't think I'm going to need quite so much. So I will cut and throw those away. And do the same thing here. Okay, I've got one layer of purple, one layer of pink. Now we can get to the sewing. So again, all we'll do is take a straight seam. So we're going to line up the raw edges and then just go to the sewing machine. Now, I'm not using any kind of guide. I'm just going to use my eye and follow I'm going to follow the edge of the foot. Okay, so far so good. Okay, and moving right along. And because we're going to be doing the same thing with the blue and the teal, or actually the green and the teal, I'm just going to chain piece it. So that's one thing I find, is that if you just think about what you're going to be doing next, a lot of times you can just whack everything out in one pass instead of having to do the same job over and over, but in different steps. Okay, so I'm going to cut my thread, and now we have 2 pieces. I'm going to split those up, and then we will open up those seams. So going back to the iron, and I think I'm going to, I think I'm going to iron to the purple. So just make sure that's taut. And again, I'm not really pulling, I'm just securing as I iron. There we go. So now I've got a nice seam happening. And on the front, give it a final press. And we are well onto our way with making beautiful strips. Now, once I get to the outside frame, again, I want to make sure that the center, that seam, is going to be in the center of the block, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I have to think about what is the total width of the area that we want to place our fabric in. So what is that width? And then the seam should go halfway in between, and then add 1/4 of an inch for seam allowance. All right, so that looks good. We have our second piece. Go back to our cutting mat. And I am going to cut these in half. So all I do is fold, and I know that those are going to fit inside, so that's good. And I'm going to check with the other side just to be safe. Yep, that's going to fit. So what I want to do is just make them even Steven. I'm going to just trim so that now I'm going to have 2 pieces of each. All right, so now I have 2 pink and purple and 2 light blue and that green. So far so good. Now we can go back to the whiteboard or the light board, and we want to start out with the line between 1 and 2. And I know that right here, this is already at about 1/4 of an inch, so I don't need to do any trimming there. I could try to trim this next one up. I'm going to try getting all of my trim lines cleaned up before I add any more fabric. I'm just trying to save steps and do everything at once. Okay, that's what's going to work. Okay, so you'll notice like this is really, I mean, I really don't even have hardly anything to cut. It was just a sliver. But we're going to go ahead and look at all 4 sides and see if there's any adjustments to that seam allowance that we could make. So I find my cut line, and you could use a card. That might be easier. So lay that card right on the line, fold it over, press with your finger, and like really, there's like nothing to cut. Try this guy. See how much we have there. Oh, I don't think there's anything. Nope. And last but not least, this third line. And nope, nothing to cut. Great. So now we have straight lines that are on all of those. Okay, after sewing, and we've wound up with 4 of the individual strips. So we have 2 for the top and 2 for the sides. Right now, I'm working on number 2. And so what I've done is I have to factor in what is the distance that this seam needs to be away from this new seam line so that this seam will wind up right here. And I played around with it and I think we have it. I took my calipers and I said, okay, we're going to go right in the center of the box right here. What is that distance? And then all I have to do is take that distance in, and there's my placement line for the existing seam. I've done that on all 4 corners. So we have a line right here, right here, right here, and right here. So if I'm working on number 2 and I want the purple to land closest to this circle, I'm going to put the purple closest to that new seam so that when it folds over, the pink is the furthest away. So I find that seam line, which is right here, and then I find the seam line that is right there. That looks good. Can you see it? There we go. All right, then all I have to do is flip it over and sew that line. And let's see what we get. All right, so one thing I could show you too is that because we're sewing outside, or actually we're going to be adding more pieces to the top and bottom, I actually started on the outside of the line, but if I were not going to be overlaying that, I would definitely have to start on that line itself. All right, moment of truth. Does this come over? And I think it does. Well, to be honest, it's not as much as I thought it would be, but I'm okay with that. As long as I do the same thing on both, we're going to be in good business. So we'll give that a press. Okay, so we've got that, and I'm going to trim off some of this excess that I don't need of the purple. So I've protected the pink because that's going to be on most of the outside of that block. So I will flip this around, tuck the pink, and open this purple up again. And then take my add a quarter and my rotary. And now I'm getting rid of the excess. Great. And that's looking good so far. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, the purple goes closest, and all I have to do is find our little lines which with the light box, it's a little easier to see through. I'm going to take these lines a little further out so that I can see them more easily. And then we lay our seam right on them. So there is one seam, and holding my finger, and I should have, yep, I laid it right on the other one. All right, take it back to the sewing machine and sew that second line. I'm going to go ahead and trim the excess purple again. And got my card. Okay, we've protected that pink fabric, and we've got 2 purples in business. We have half the block already finished. We're going to repeat the same process for the top and bottom, and then we're finished. All right, so let's go to the other side, and this is just the same size. So we're going to add more to this, the top and bottom, so that way we know where to lay the fabric. So we're going to be right here. So yes, that was the one line. Okay, just had to orient myself again. All right, so we have right there, and this is where we're going to lay our seams, right there, and right there, and right there. Okay, cool. Yep, we got it. Grab our, this time I think I'm gonna do the teal on the closest to the interior. So I'm finding that line, and I found that one. And let's find the second one, which is right there. We're going to pinch and back to the sewing machine. With any luck, we did it. Which we did. I like it. That looks good. Okay, so now we have one more to do, but let's go ahead and trim. Yep, let's go ahead and trim some excess. And we will lower our bulk. We just did this side. And we're going to lay this down. Grab our ruler. And we lay it out. Yep, it's coming together. Give this side a press. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find our seam line. And we want the green closest to our line. And where is our, there it is. We need a little bit more light. That'll help. And that was our line right here. And this is our line right here. Okay, so we're going to find that that matches right there, I think. Yep, so we have that line and we have our seam line. And we'll do the same thing on this side. And it matches. Okay, so pinch and bring to the sewing machine. We will give it a trim. Where's my little card? I lose everything. There it is on the floor. All right, so we have our last line to be trimmed. And let's grab our ruler. And I think we're going to be in business. Making sure I don't cut too much. I'm good. I wanted to protect that outer fabric. Okay, get rid of some of this excess. Go back to our block, and all we have to do is flip, iron, and trim. And we are going to have a completed box. This kind of reminds me of color blocking. Very 80s. Very cool. And this is pretty much what I thought it was going to look like, which I'm very happy with. So let's go with a final 4 cuts. One, two cuts, three cuts, Let's get with 4 cuts, and we did it. We have a framed bird, and it's right in the center. I'm very, very pleased. Give it a final press. That one was super fun, and I love these colors. Woohoo! Okay. What is this one? This is block number 11, shapes number 1, and now we're going to move on to shapes number 2. So, be right back. Okay, moving on to shapes number 2. This block is no problem whatsoever. It's straight lines, and with that in mind, we can do a little bit of fussy cutting. I have picked out some complementary colors. I have some cool gray, white, and a pop of green. We're going to start out with the green with a little star effect that's going to go right in the center of 1. So we're going to turn it over, and we just have to decide which few stars are actually going to make it into this. And I'm looking at this, and I think I want to get 2 side by side. Oh, no, these would look really good because there's a little bit more room to breathe just around those 2 stars. And all we have to do is line them up in the center. So it's going to be a piece of cake. All right, I'm going to trim this a little bit ahead of time. That way I can see pretty much where my lines will fall, and then I can get a little bit easier precision piecing. So I'm going to grab my mat and just eyeballing. These are the 2 that I want to focus on. So I'm going to trim just a little bit away from the bottom, more from the side, more from the top, and more from the other side. Now, hoping that I didn't take too much, which I didn't. Okay, great. So those are going to fit just about there. And I can take my tweezers that are, I love these. They happen to be Bernina tweezers, but there's plenty on the market to choose from. So that would look really, really good if I could do it right about there. All right, so that's what I'm going to aim for. Now, I'm holding my finger down because I know where I want to place it, and I don't want to reposition it. So I'm going to grab my glue and, again, a Q-tip. There you go. And I am just going to get a little dab of it. And all I really have to do is focus on that center. Now I've done it. I've moved my fabric, so I have to reposition. No problem. I'm going to grab my tweezers and I'm going to lay it right there. And then I'm going to check to make sure that I have centered those, which I believe I have. So I'm checking over here how much space I have to that line. And actually I have quite a bit of space. I'm going to turn it around, and I have a little bit more space on this side. So I'm going to scoot them over just a little bit. And I think that'll be okay. Let's check the other side. So I can see that my star is here and here. So between those 2, that is pretty centered. And then from here, and where's the bottom of that star? Right about there. So I think we did it. There and there. And you know what? I think if I fold them over, I look pretty. If I fold them over from where the star would start, I'm pretty much in the center. So I think we're good. All right, I'm going to give that a little press. And our sparkle stars are ready. Okay. And I don't need any more glue just now. Next up is going to be the adjacent boxes on either side of number 1. So we're going to work on number 2, which is on your left. And for this, we're using this gray fabric. I have already cut out 2 small slivers. And actually, they are so close. Yeah, so I had to make sure which was the right side. So that's the correct side. So I want to do that face down. And I, to be honest, am not a bit concerned about my final placement because it's pretty negotiable. So if I want these 2 dots to kind of land in the center, I need to find out what that distance is, and then use my calipers. So one thing you can do is from this line, I'm going to extend it out, and that's where I know I need to place my fabric, because that's going to be the seam line. And so if I just extend that as a guide, now I know how far I am. And looking at that, I think we could even afford to move these stars over just a smidge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Because why not? We want it to be very cool. All right, so that's good. And it could take a little bit more glue. It's all a work in progress. So put that down and put that down and let it secure. All right, so now I'm going to measure, and not even measure, I'm going to find out what the distance is between number 2 and my sew line. So it's going to be that far apart. So that's the distance. And let's go ahead and lay our fabric down. And I want from my sew line to that new dot. So find the back. Okay. So I've got right sides facing together, and I want this, one of these dots, to fall into the center. So I'm going to hold my line, and I'm going to say it's about there. That's where I want, cool. That's where I'm going to lay this so that this dot is going to fall just about the center. So I can go ahead and sew that first line. And we're doing line 1 to 2. I'm dropping my needle manually so that way I know it goes exactly where I want it. And I'm sewing across. Great. And once we flip it over, boom, it fits. So that's exactly what I need to have happen. Now, I used an eyeball for a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, so I don't need to do any trimming, but I do need to press. All right, so we have 1 and 2, and now we're going to do the same thing. Again, I'm not really concerned about placement. We're going to do 1 to 3. So these are so close that I need to make sure that I'm sewing facing right sides together, which I am. Now, I've got 1 to 3. Drop my needle, and away I go. Okay, now we have 2 gray border rectangles in the making. And then we're ready to start going on the top and bottom. This block could not be any easier. All right, so that is going to be our white fabric, which I've gone ahead, and this is really pretty. It's got some little stars and some little circles. I'm not worried about placement. This fabric's going to do all the work for me. So I'm going to have right sides together, which I do. And I'm just over my sew line. And that looks good. So now it's time to do 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to go to 4. In some blocks, I'm really particular about placement, and in others, I just enjoy the process, and whatever happens, happens. And here, I had a really great result. I have a star, and I have a kind of a circle on both sides of the green. They're not exactly even Steven, but I don't care. All right, so I've pressed that off. I do need to make a trim before we move on to the bottom. So I'm going to protect what we just sewed, and I'm just getting rid of this excess, the excess fabric beyond that seam line. So I'm going to fold it over and okay. Now I've gotten rid of most of that bulk, and now we can just do that final piece, which is number 5. Grab my white little piece of fabric, and this time, oh, I almost went into the wrong one. This time we are, I'm going to say we're here. It was that simple. Cool. And I've got my stars, and actually that's kind of fun. I've got 2 stars and 2 kind of, I don't know what you call them. They're circle stars, but they're crisscross from each other. So that's really fun. All right, give these a press. And then we'll do a little trim from behind, protecting what we just sewed, because that would be sad. And I've got my little card and my ruler. And now all we have to do is give the entire block that final trim, and we are good to go. This one was easy peasy. It doesn't really have to be all about fussy cutting. And sometimes when you don't use fabrics with a lot of detail or a lot of graphic prints, maybe you'll want to do some extra thread work. So maybe you could take advantage of the special stitches that your sewing machine has, or you may want to embroider something on one of your patches or one of your blocks. Or maybe you might even quilt some additional flourish on your block. But no matter what you choose, our goal is to make sure you start off with a very pretty block, which I am loving this one. It's got graphic prints, a pop of color in the center. I really enjoyed it, and it took no time at all. So next time we are going to work on blocks 13 through 15, shapes 3 through 5. I hope you had fun, and I will sew with you next time. Bye for now.